This is the Spurscast with your host, Paul Garcia.
Welcome back to another episode of the Spurscast. On today's episode, I will be speaking with Project Spurs Director of Digital Content, Joe Garcia. In this episode, Joe and I will discuss the Spurs one game after the All-Star break, some injury updates for the team, and we'll look at the bottom four teams as the season does come to an end here in the final 22 games of the season. Joe, how are you doing?
Doing good. I've been busy, man. We went ahead and recorded a Spurs Rewind and got that ready to pre-produce, and now I'm up here doing a double duty, joining you for the Spurscast. So let's do this.
All right, man. So yeah, like I said, shouldn't be too long of an episode. So what's going on here is the last time I recorded Spurscast was about 8 days ago because the team was on the All-Star break. They did return on Thursday evening with a loss to the Dallas Mavericks in Dallas, and yeah, so let's go right into that one game that's happened, Joe, since I last recorded. So the Spurs did lose to Dallas on the road. They lost by 26 points. It was like between 8 to 12 points for most of the night for about three quarters. Then within 3 minutes of that fourth quarter, just 3 minutes, the Mavericks go from +9 to +19. They're up by 19 points, and then it gets into the 20s, and we know it's over by then. Luka Doncic is a star for Dallas with 28 points. Kyrie Irving ends up with 23 points. Tim Hardaway Jr. comes off the bench to score 22 points. Dallas outscored San Antonio from the three-point line by 36 points. They outscored them from the free throw line by 12 points. As far as for the Spurs, who played really well for them, again, you really want to more so look at the first three quarters because that's when it was more competitive. Keldon Johnson was their best player on the night with 22 points, 14 in the paint, very aggressive, attacking the Mavericks defense. He ends up with 8 rebounds, 7 assists, but 6 turnovers is the one negative there for Keldon. Charles Bassey had a good night off the bench with 16 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 assists. And then Malaki Branham, the rookie, again continues to have really good games in February. He ends up with 23 points on the night, 12 in the paint, 2 rebounds, and kind of like Keldon, good ball distribution, 5 assists, but he's also turning it over, 4 turnovers on the night. And so, this was a game that we kind of expected the Spurs to lose. Dallas was favored by 14. They ended up winning by 26. Again, no big surprise there. As far as the Spurs' standings, they really haven't changed because it's only been one game. We do want to note, though, that they're on now a 15-game losing streak, which is also, continued to be a franchise record. They're 0-7 on the Rodeo Road Trip with 2 games at Utah left and still have the second worst record in the league right now. So, Joe, what are your thoughts on that returning game at Dallas on Thursday?
Oh, expect more of the same. Really, if the Spurs are behind by the first quarter, you already know what's about to happen. They just I looked at a tweet that you had put up earlier in the week, and you were giving some pretty decent information because it was an article from the from the NBA.com, and it was saying where I guess the what do you say it? It was the progression of the teams. They were going ahead and putting out the latest information that they had from teams 1 through 30, and they had the Spurs dead last, and that was very telling because they're 0-42 when they've or 0-40, I believe, is when they fell behind by double digits this season. They haven't not been able to win, and this is indicative of a team that's still in flux and young and missing some key pieces here. And then you look and see, like you said, you're looking at one Keldon Johnson and, his high turnover, let's say percentage is a little bit jarring now. Spurs fans are starting to turn on him a little bit. It is what it is. He can't do everything on his own, and he's trying to will the team to victory. But unfortunately, with the personnel that's on the court right now, it's kind of hard for him to, not have things go south when you're trying to do everything all at once. And then the rookie too, you got the young guy here in Malaki Branham. His utilization, he has a high percentage of minutes. In this game, it's 35 minutes, but he was productive with 23 points. So you see some things that you can get excited for. But the one thing that I was questioning, Paul, when I was looking at this injury report is questionable. Jeremy Sohan. I'm like, how questionable can he be? He was playing at the NBA All-Star weekend, enjoying the festivities over there with the Rising Stars game with Jordan Rising Stars. Just Coach Pop was doing him a solid and giving him some time to rest, So, yeah, but questionable. Okay, come on, Pop.
Yeah, so no, and he's still questionable for Saturday at Utah. I just got the injury report a few hours ago.
Maybe the dunk. It was the dunk that did it. Maybe he tweaked his back or something.
So I wanted to say one thing that you mentioned there, and you were actually right. They were 0-42 going into the All-Star break when they're down by double digits, and now that they lost, against Dallas, they're 0-43. So one thing I do want to note though is that let's just say they never win a game this season when they're down by double digits. It's not going to be a record, unfortunately. There was another team that it was during a lockout season that it was the Clippers. There we go. I think they said 96 season where the Clippers went like 0-58 or 0-36, something like that, and they have the record for like not winning a game when down by double digits. So the Spurs won't be the first team to do that if that ends up happening. But yeah, Joe, like you're completely right. It's just, with just the personnel not being out there, they're always going to be at a disadvantage. And like I said, the Mavs were favored by 14, and that's kind of what we expected.
One of the things I was going to talk about real quick though is with the personnel that's out there on the court, the thing is that the Spurs are still a little bit competitive, even if it's like the first or second quarter, and they can be competitive throughout the game, but unfortunately they just don't have the talent. They don't have that personnel on the court that can actually win them the games. And I think that's what Spurs fans are really frustrated with this season, since it is a rebuilding season. The Spurs went ahead and traded two of their veteran players in Jakob Poeltl and Josh Richardson, which you knew instantly was going to make the team worse. But this is going to be the normal moving forward because, again, it's just the personnel that's on the court. Getting a top draft pick will help, but is it going to translate into a quick turnaround? Possibly not. You're still a couple of seasons away from, even talking play-in. So be patient, Spurs fans. Their time is coming, but there's still going to be a lot of growing pains.
Yeah, it reminds me of the graph for quarters 1 through 3. They're always like kind of right there, and then all of a sudden it just shoots up to the 20s, like for most of the night. Most games for the team, especially during this losing streak, it's been pretty brutal for San Antonio. Yeah. All right, so Joe, we did get some injury news, so let's go ahead and dive into this topic. And so Devin Vassell could be returning here pretty soon. So according to Jeff McDonald of the San Antonio Express News, he tweeted recently that the Spurs are targeting a soft date of March 2nd, which is the first day they come back to San Antonio against the Indiana Pacers, for Devin to return, according to Coach Pop. So again, it's not set in stone that that's when Devin's coming back, but we are getting closer to that mark. And again, look at March 2nd as that date, most likely. And then there's some injury news on Khem Birch, who was part of the Jakob Poeltl trade. He hasn't played with the San Antonio, and so before the Dallas game, the Spurs put their injury report out, and they put that Birch is now out with right knee. Let me see if I say this right. Chondromalacia. Wow. And so what that is just do a quick Google search. I'm not a medical doctor or anything, but it just basically says that it's a breakdown of the cartilage on the underside of the kneecap. So again, it's a right knee issue for him, and so Jeff McDonald also reported that the Spurs didn't set a return date for Birch, and they were made aware of his injury. So again, it's not like the situation with Golden State and Portland where Golden State kind of wasn't aware of that injury with Gary Payton II. The Spurs were made aware by Toronto that, hey, this guy has this injury, but they still said yes to the trade. So I'm even wondering too if he even plays at all this season, considering there's only 22 games. What are your thoughts on one, Devin? Probably coming back next week, and then for Birch probably being out, I would say maybe the rest of the season.
Yeah, this has actually been a hot topic. We've talked about it on the Spurs Rewind and in my own personal podcast as well. And I really believe that what Coach Pop was saying is that, he expected him to come back sometime after the NBA All-Star break. And I still fully, believe that will happen. As you were stating, the first home game here that they have coming up believe it's March the 2nd.
Yes.
I would expect him to return in one of these home games that, the early on home games that the Spurs have with the AT&T Center. Of course, he's going to be on a minutes restriction. And even, with him coming back, it's good for the overall morale of said player, Devin Vassell, and also the team as a whole, because one thing that I'm afraid of is bad habits, and if you start getting into these long, lengthy losing streaks, 15 games, like Coach Pop had talked about, calling out these young players, it's basically telling them that they were just playing sloppy, lazy basketball. You don't want these things to continue, the losing to continue the way that it has been. I think Coach Pop is fine with the losing as long as the effort's there, and it has not been there. And maybe with the return of one Devin Vassell and getting that team, starting lineup back to normal, maybe that might help a little bit and make them a little bit more competitive throughout the game. Because, let's face it, when teams are dropping 140 plus, 130 plus, you need your personnel, your two best players out on the court. And for going back to that NBA.com article, in the latest standings, they were showing the utilization rate of both, Keldon Johnson and also Devin Vassell. They've been, their usage rate has gone up quite a bit from the prior seasons. I think they were third in usage rate for this coming season. So it's like, man, that's a big turnaround. So it just shows you how heavily the Spurs depend on Keldon and also Devin Vassell. So hopefully Devin, if he comes back, will make the team a little bit more competitive.
Yeah, and like what you said there, I totally agree with you as far as like when he comes back, he's not going to be like fully back. Like, I definitely see the Spurs being super cautious with him. Like you said, minutes restriction for sure. The first, few games that he comes back. I even think like back-to-back, he's probably not going to play in those. They won't let him. If there's maybe like not more than a day off of rest, again, they probably won't play him. So I think it'll be a very gradual transition for him to come back. It won't be like full strength Devin there. But again, like you said, at some point they got to get some wins. They can't just end the year, 0 and whatever, like what would be like 0 and 37 at this point. At the end of the year like that, come on, you can't expect that. So they got to get some wins at some points. And like one thing that I noticed is what you just said there, the fact that like, yes, they can lose games like we expect, but normally they're really competitive. They only lose by like 10, 12 points here and there. But lately, what I even tweeted this out yesterday during the game when Dallas went up by 20 is that in this Rodeo Road Trip, 4 of their 7 games have been blowouts, like 20+ points. And again, that's not the norm for this Spurs team. We know that they lose a lot this year, but it's usually competitive losses. It's not as bad. It's like it's not like blowouts like we saw last night, 26 points. But that's been happening frequently now in this road trip. And I think that's what Coach Pop's talking about. He doesn't want to see that where like it's just like they fight for 3 quarters and the fourth quarter, we don't have it. Sorry, like just can't match their talent. That becomes bad habits. You're right. I mean, I talked about last week with Josh Paredes about how it's almost like a track meet. Just the teams are just scoring like nonstop. And it's hard to keep up because they're just like even just yesterday against Dallas, like multiple times Dallas just got to the rim, like nobody's right there contesting or wide open threes. And so I think you're correct there where you do want to see them at least, even if they're going to lose, yes, they're going to lose, but more competitive losses. You don't want to see them getting blown out by 26
and
points.
I think a lot of the losing too has to do with their floor spacing as well. If you look to see what they do from a defensive perspective, they're crowding the lanes. They're not coming out in the shooting lanes. They're not coming out to guard the 3. They're letting players shoot at will, uncontested threes. They're knocking the sad thing is that a lot of these other teams that they're going up against, they have, pretty decent 3-point shooters and they're knocking down those wide open threes. Yep. And the Spurs just are in flux. There's no communication out there on the court. They're just, basically looks like they're just trying to play man to man and they're not really fully playing that zone the way it needs to be played. And unfortunately, when you have players that aren't really playing at that high level, paying attention to detail, you get these bad habits, where they're putting their heads down, the body language isn't there, no communication. They're letting, plays develop and they're not calling out for help and they get caught. So, just get sucked into the paint and other teams are just popping out. It's easy to score on the Spurs team. You suck the defense in, you just pop it out to the open player and there they go and, knock down an open jumper, mid-range jumper, or they're going ahead and knocking down 3-pointers or they have, somebody with the missed assignment, easy dunk, easy, backdoor cut. I mean, it's not hard to figure this team out. That's the thing in that Coach Pop, I think, is frustrated with is the consistency. So if the team becomes a little bit more consistent, we won't see these blowout losses. Just, if you lose by 10 or 11, that's fine. But getting blown out by 20 plus every single night, there's a problem.
Yeah, that becomes that's a huge problem. Again, we'll see if they can try to fix that because that has been happening multiple times now on this Rodeo Road Trip from what we've seen. All right, so now, Joe, our last topic here is I kind of just want to dive into the final teams, the final stretch run, should I say. And so I really want to look at 4 teams in particular, the bottom 4 teams expected to finish out at the season in the bottom 4. And that's the Rockets, who are right now 30th, Spurs, who are 29th, the Pistons, who are 28th, and the Charlotte Hornets, who are 27th. And so, what is the difference? Of course, we've already known, what we've been saying all season is that if you finish with the bottom 3 record, you have the best chance of landing the number 1 pick, 14% chance lottery odds. But however, there is some incentive to also finishing with the worst record because as far as your worst case scenario. So if you're 30th, like Houston right now, and you finish worst case scenario, what happens if you don't get number 1? If you end up, what's the worst possible pick you could get? They could end up getting 5th. And again, that's the worst case scenario. Right now, the Spurs, their worst case scenario could be the 6th pick. And then the Pistons, it could end up being the 7th pick. And then the Hornets, who are with the 4th worst record, we even know that their lottery odds at number 1 decrease. They only have a 12.5% chance at landing number 1. So when we look at the games left for each team, the Rockets have 24 games left. The Spurs have 22, the Pistons have 22, and the Hornets have 22. When I look at Tankathon's strength of schedule, I wanted to see, who has the easiest schedule to end the year and who has the most difficult. And so again, this could work out if you have the most difficult, because you're playing all the hard teams. And so there's a better chance for you to end up with the worst record. So if we look at their ranking as far as schedule breakdown, strength of schedule, should I say, the Spurs have the most challenging schedule out of these 4 teams. They have the 14th most difficult schedule. Then it's the Rockets who have the 17th most difficult schedule. Then the Hornets and Pistons have two of the easier schedules to finish the year. So that's an incentive for San Antonio and Houston to get the worst record. As far as where do their win projections look like when we use different models, like just their own team record, the cleaning the glasses expectations wins record, and then 538's Raptor and ELO models, Houston's projected to win between like 18 and 20 games. The Spurs are projected to win between 18 and 20 games as well. And then the Pistons and the Hornets should win more games than San Antonio and Houston. So again, I think that fight for 30th ends up coming down to San Antonio and Houston. And then lastly, some of these teams can't control their own destiny because they're going to play each other. And so the Houston does have 4 games left against the bottom 4 teams. They're going to play the Spurs twice, the Pistons once, and the Hornets once. The Spurs only get Houston twice out of these 4 teams. The Pistons are going to face Charlotte, Toronto, and Houston. And then lastly, the Hornets are going to play Detroit twice and Houston twice. So again, I think that it comes down between San Antonio and Houston for that worst record. What do you think, Joe? What are your thoughts out of these 4 teams?
The way it's looking right now, and I have to agree with that. I think it's going to be between the Rockets and the Spurs for that number 1 overall pick. As far as the worst record in the NBA now, anything can happen once you're expected to land anywhere between 1 through 4, or 1 through 5. The lottery balls can fall in your favor, and the Hornets or the Pistons could sneak in and get that number 1 spot. But respectively, when you're looking to see what the strength of schedule is, the Rockets are obviously tanking, so they're in no big rush to win. And that's the thing with the Spurs, is that if the Spurs, they play the Rockets 2 more times here. If the Rockets are just going to tank, the Spurs are going to have to work for that win, or just keep doing what you're doing and not really, win the games, because they haven't been very competitive. And if the Rockets are like, hey, we're not as competitive, but we're still better than you, they can win these last 2 games and kind of help the Spurs a little bit. So it's the battle for the worst record in the NBA. And it just goes to show you, when we're just talking about this right now, this is the state that San Antonio Spurs fans are in right now. They're not even excited about, let's look and see what's going to happen with the play-in. Those days are long gone, and they're not even concerned about the playoffs. They're not concerned about anything else other than, is the team going to get that number 1 spot? And if they get the number 1 spot, the city is going to erupt like if they won the finals or something. Everybody's just like, we need a top pick. It's going to help everything. It's going to be the magic coin, that's going to miraculously turn around the Spurs, future. And it might not happen that way, but it's just funny to see the state of where things are currently. I mean, the Spurs, yes, they unfortunately are this bad, Paul, that we have to talk about this now.
I know. Looking competitively at like how to get the worst record is one thing that I had to research that I've never had to do ever since I covered the Spurs. And it reminds me of a tweet that just like how the expectations have changed, just flip flop compared to when we were used to like Spurs competitive basketball. Is I got a tweet recently where they were like 0-7 on the Rodeo Road Trip. And they're like, and somebody tweeted me, they're like, remember the days when like 1 loss on the Rodeo Road Trip was like the worst thing? It was like not a good, it was like a failure of a road trip. Now, like if they can get 1 win, that's going to be like a good thing. Like they might go 0-9 on this road trip. It's just complete turnaround of the expectations. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to go through it just to show that, I think that, again, I just wanted to analyze, like, who's going to end up with the worst record most likely. And again, it comes down to that fight between the Spurs and Rockets. And I do want to note that Houston has the most games left, which means they can, basically lose the most, like as far as like they can see what the other teams are doing and kind of have an idea. Do we need to lose those final 2 games, or, what do we need to do to make sure San Antonio doesn't pass us? Or
I'm sure their head coach will, if that's the case, he's going to start resting players, load management.
Yeah, so man, it's just wild. And that's also one thing too that I want to mention about Devin coming back. Like I think when Devin comes back, the team's gonna get a little bit better, and that's where like we might start seeing reactions from the fans like, like are they gonna start winning games and ruin their chance like at finishing the worst record? So
if Devin comes back and they start winning, everybody's gonna start getting their t-shirts from that phrase he coined earlier in the season, we hooping.
Yes,
and when as soon as he said that, Paul, the team was 5-2. I knew it was going to happen, and I kind of was like, "Oh man, don't say that right now because these can change real quick." And sure enough, they did. So I don't think we're gonna be hooping. I think they're gonna be like we tanking.
Yeah. So I mean, again, that's just kind of yeah. You're right, Joe. That's just the state of where today is. The fact that I'm looking like having to analyze how do the Spurs end up with the worst record. What's the best way for them to do that?
Or will you
But again,
the tank
it's just
machine, right? What did you say? You had to go so many times. You had to go ahead and run it
yes.
through the computer.
Now
to
that
get
I do want to
the
I do
one?
want to comment on. So tonight I struck gold here. So what happened was normally it takes me about 7 to like 11 tries to get the Spurs the number one pick. I promise you tonight the first try I got them. It's at San Antonio number one pick. So the first try. So again, maybe that's some luck for them. Again, I'll try next week and see what it says. So I mean that's just where things are today. It's just like you're trying to get them with the worst record and trying to get just increase their lottery odds as best as possible.
The next thing we're going to wind up doing is taking bets over here in the Project Spurs Slack. Okay, they get the 1 or the 4th pick. Who's it going to be? You know, we're going to start taking bets to see who they're going to pick at 1 through 4 or something. I mean, we got to have fun with it somehow, man. It is what it is. It
is. Yeah, you're right. It is what it is. And so I know. Like just my stat side of me, I'm gonna be creating like a tracker and like probably looking at Charlotte, Houston Rockets, like have all these stats, just keeping an eye every night of how these teams are finishing. But that's just where the Spurs are at this point of the season. All right, Joe. Thanks for joining me here on this episode of the Spurscast, and thank you to all Project Spurs Spurscast listeners for listening to this episode. I want to say thank you also to Joe for mixing and producing this episode. From all of us at Project Spurs, stay safe and have a great day.